Thank you all for joining us and welcome to the Fleets for the Future Cooperative Procurement Opportunities final webinar. My name is Sarah Reed, Program Coordinator at the National Association of Regional Councils. If you should have any technical questions during the webinar, please email Cameron at Cameron, C-A-M-E-R-O-N @narc.org. You can see it on the welcome slide here. There will be time for questions and discussions at the end of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it into the questions box on your control panel on the right-hand side. A recording of the webinar will be available after, and you can download the slides right now in the control panel under Handouts. Next slide, please. Next slide. So today I'm pleased to be joined by several of our excellent team members. We're going to be going over the opportunities available through Fleets for the Future as the project wraps up. At the end, we'll also hear from Ryan Daly from the Electrification Coalition about a new EV initiative available for public fleets. Please keep in mind you can download the slides for closer viewing and that they will be available following the webinar. Next slide. Fleets for the Future is a 2.5-year Department of Energy grant project led by the National Association of Regional Councils. NARC is the membership association for metropolitan planning organizations and regional councils around the country. And our project team included many Clean Cities coalitions, 5 regional councils, and a handful of technical experts. And this project is just wrapping up this week, so this will be our final webinar to give you some insight into the opportunities that will be available going forward. Next slide. So the goals of Fleets for the Future were to lower upfront costs for all types of alternative fuel vehicles by aggregating demand through cooperative procurement. The team also developed resources such as procurement best practices, timelines, checklists to enable fleet managers to plan and optimize alt fuel usage across their fleets. We are now working to catalog the lessons learned for peer sharing through our final project wrap-up and reporting. Next slide. So as I mentioned, one of our goals is to create resources to guide fleets through procurement. So all of our best practice documents are available on our website at fleetsforthefuture.org. We've created 5, one focused on EVs, one on gaseous fuels, one on financing, and one on procurement for alternative fuel vehicles. And we have a brand new one that is a guide to the guide for electric vehicle supply equipment. It has about 50 different resources that are collected and explained on EVSE, already available EVSE resources, all compiled into one document. So it's really easy to find exactly what you're looking for. So be sure to go to fleetsforthefuture.org and check that out. So now I turn it over to Megan Aggie from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council.
Great, thanks, Sarah. My name is Megan Aki, and I'm a clean energy analyst at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council in Boston. And today I'm going to talk a little bit with you about the state contract that we partnered with several state agencies to develop as a part of our work through the Fleets for the Future initiative. And that's available to public entities nationwide to purchase off of, and also give you a sense of the different approaches that we took to group purchasing through the program to help communities access bulk discounts available on the statewide contract. So hope to leave you with a couple of models to think about and lessons learned from our program. Next slide, please. So just to start things out a little bit about MAPC, we are the regional planning agency that serves the greater Boston area, so 101 cities and towns in the Metro Boston area. We work on a wide range of planning areas, from traditional areas like land use, transportation, and housing, to more kind of newer areas for regional planning agencies like clean energy, public health, and we also have a very robust government affairs team. Our work through the Fleets for the Future grant is a collaborative effort between our procurement department, our clean energy team, and our transportation department. Next slide. On that note, a lot of our work that we do with cities and towns has to do with supporting communities through the procurement process for a variety of different things that communities are looking to purchase. So we do a lot of work on police vehicles, fire apparatus, group purchasing. On the clean energy side, we help communities do collective purchasing for LED streetlights, energy services companies, solar PV installations, and also municipal aggregation. So our work through the Fleets for the Future project was really sort of our first foray into expanding this group purchasing work that we've been doing with communities for many years to also work in the alternative fuel vehicle space. Next slide, please. So our project work to face the future was not something that we were able to do alone. We were heavily partnered with a lot of different state agencies and regional, local, and utility partners as well. And you'll see up on the slide there, we had a strong partnership with the Department of Energy Resources and the Operational Services Division in Massachusetts in particular, and also had an advisory committee that provided a lot of helpful feedback as we sort of tested. Oh. Next slide.
Still there?
Megan, did we lose you?
Oh, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes.
You can hear me, or you can't hear me?
We can't hear you.
I can.
You're just kind of going out.
How about now? Is that better?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
Okay, great. So the first thing I wanted to talk a little bit more about is the state contract that we developed with the Operational Services Division in Massachusetts and the Department of Energy Resources, as this was really the basis for our approach to group purchasing. And so the Operational Service Division is the state agency in Massachusetts that manages all sorts of procurement that's available to public entities in Massachusetts. And this is the particular contract that we helped develop that made more alternative fuel technologies available in Massachusetts. Next slide. So on the statewide contract, there are 3 different categories. And in the first category, we have 6 different vendors that have offerings for electric vehicle charging stations. The second category covers a range of idle reduction technologies. Currently, we only have 2 vendors in that category, eNow and Thermo King. And in the third category, this covers aftermarket conversion technology. So anything that converts a traditional gas internal combustion engine vehicle to an alternative fuel. So this could be CNG, propane, hybrid electric, or hydraulic electric. So there's a couple of reasons that made this contract particularly viable for our group purchasing program. So I'm going to talk through those quickly now. Next slide. So the main reason that I wanted to highlight this contract for folks today is that the way that we structured it, it is actually open to public entities nationwide. And so this is not just an opportunity for folks in Massachusetts. Anyone can purchase off of it. And at the end of the webinar, I'll talk a little bit more about what that process looks like for people who are out of state who are interested in using the contract. Next slide. So when I say public entities, this includes a wide variety of different state agencies, municipalities, and local public libraries, schools, higher education, hospitals, even some nonprofit entities might qualify if they are working with Massachusetts. So it's a pretty wide range of not just cities and towns, but also these other public entities. Next slide. So one of the other things that we baked into the contract is that because the clean vehicle space is an area where technology is rapidly evolving every year, we wanted to set it up so it was flexible and adaptive as new things came on the market. So we can periodically reopen the contract when there are a wide variety of new vendors that we think have viable opportunities for public entities to purchase in those 3 categories. We also have the flexibility for current vendors who are already on the contract to add new products as they develop them. Next slide, please. And so lastly, we set up the contract so that
Megan, I think we lost you again.
I can try calling back in, or sorry about that. It says I have no connection, so should I?
I think you can go ahead.
Okay. So we asked the vendors to provide bulk discounts along with the products that they wanted to add to the contract. And so that was included in our evaluation criteria for the vendors. Next slide. So just as an example of that, these are all the vendors that are in category 1 for EV charging stations. So we have 6 vendors and they have a variety of different products offering level 1, level 2, and DC fast charge stations. And as you see for each of those, there are a range of discounts starting at as low as 2% and up to 40% even in some of the categories. And those are dependent on the volume of the particular order submitted off of the contract. Next slide. So our primary project under the grant used the BEH 102 contract to consolidate purchases of public entities to allow for them to achieve higher bulk discounts by purchasing together. So for this next part, I'm going to outline the models that we tested for both of the rounds that we did under the grant, and hopefully spur some ideas on how you could replicate this in your region. Next slide. So where we started at the start of this program was by assessing where there was the most appetite at the local level and where there was also the most opportunity. So we took a look at cities and towns' vehicle inventories and saw that there was a sort of large opportunity that didn't currently have existing state programs addressing it in sort of the light duty truck, medium to heavy duty vehicle space. So thinking about pickup trucks, work trucks, vans, and buses and other work vehicles. Next slide, please. So for the first round of the program, there was a lot of upfront recruitment and engagement that we did over the course of about 6 or so months. But when we finally kind of got that initial interest from communities and figured out what we were going to focus on for the group purchase, we decided to tackle hybrid electric retrofits for vans and shuttle buses. And we negotiated this pricing agreement in partnership with the Department of Energy Resources, the Leading by Example team in Massachusetts. We negotiated that agreement with XL Hybrids on behalf of several state agencies and also the city of Cambridge. And so the way that we were able to finalize the agreement, we had both accelerated time-based discounts, as you can see, for sort of 3 distinct windows of time. And this was meant to incentivize earlier purchases over the 6-month window of the group purchasing program. We also had within those time windows volume-based discounts that were based on the total number of purchase orders that came through from all of the participating entities. So in the first window, if 25 vehicle retrofit orders came through, that would trigger that 20 plus vehicles level of bulk discount. Next slide. So what did this end up with? So for the first round of the program, we were able to have 4 fleets participate, purchasing in that first time window to get the most discount with the time-based and the volume-based discount. And they retrofitted 29 of their vehicles with the XL Hybrids technology. This led to about a 11 to 19% discount, which comes out to around $1,000 to $2,000 off per vehicle retrofit. And then hopefully the benefit over time as the technology is implemented is a 25 to 30% improvement in the fuel economy of these vehicles for the fleets that retrofitted their vehicles. Next slide. So to sort of replicate this and learn from what we did the first round with XL Hybrids, but had also heard from a lot of communities that there was a high amount of interest in doing a similar group purchase, but for electric vehicle charging stations this time. So we sort of evaluated the approach that we took with the aftermarket conversion technology and made some adjustments. And these are sort of some of the things that we learned in that process. One of the things that we did up front just to get more an interest from communities is to sort of remove the barriers to participation by reducing the level of commitment that they had to submit to us to show that initial interest For the first round of the program, we had asked communities to provide like a signed letter of commitment from their municipal CEO. And this time around, we just did a survey so that we could have more time to do that one-on-one engagement, which gets to my second point, that having that longer period of time, at least 3 to 6 months, to really engage the communities or the particular public entities that you're trying to bring together for the group purchase to narrow down what the opportunities are and figure out the specifications that they need. It's really necessary to then move quickly with the actual group purchase off of the contract. And then this time around, because we were doing electric vehicle charging stations, we had to sort of adjust our pricing approach because the bid that we were doing for the charging stations was going to be much more complicated. It wasn't necessarily amenable to the time-based windows we had done with XL hybrids. So we opted to do more of a streamlined process where we brought the communities together to do that upfront purchase of the equipment only, and then would individually help the communities through the installation process. Next slide. So this July, we issued our request for quotes on behalf of 8 communities for a total of 23 electric vehicle charging stations. Earlier in August, we awarded 2 vendors as a part of that request for quotes process for the equipment and for the software for the charging stations. And the pricing we got for that ended up with about 7 to 13% discounts off of the MSRP for the charging stations, which will come out to about $1,000 to $2,000 off per station for the communities that move forward with their purchase order through the request for quotes process. Next slide. So just to wrap things up, I wanted to provide folks with some guidance on how you can use the statewide contract and how you can learn more about our group purchasing program. Next slide. It's actually fairly easy to use the BH 102 contract if you're out of state. The first thing to do is just to review the terms of the contract with your particular local procurement officer or whoever your particular entity is in charge of procurement. And the link is on this slide, and you can access the contract there. The next thing would be to just notify the contract manager in Massachusetts that you intend to purchase off the contract. This just helps the state keep track of who from out of state is using the contract, since you wouldn't be purchasing through the state's online procurement portal. And then you can follow the processes that the contract user guide outlines for purchasing. The minimum requirements is just to request 3 quotes from the pre-qualified vendors that are on the contract. You can get more information about that process in the guide that's linked on the slide. Great. So to close, I just wanted to say that I'm happy to speak with folks more if they want to learn more about the statewide contract or our group purchasing program. For any vendors who are being asked to the contract the next time that we reopen it. So I'm going to turn it over to Philip now to talk a little bit more about the EV charging station procurement opportunities.
Thanks, Meg, and thanks everyone for joining. My name is Philip Krajcik. I'm with the Cadmus Group, which is an environmental and sustainability consulting company focused on producing social good. We're the lead of the technical team on this project, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about the EV charging contracts that we have available on this grant. Later on, Ryan Daly is going to walk you through some of the electric vehicles that are actually available through Sourcewell as well. Next slide. So to start out, these are the 3 different types of contracts that are the 3 different entities that we're working on producing EV charging contracts. 1 at the national level, which is Sourcewell, and 2 of our regional councils. You already heard from MAPC, but Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments is also working on an EV charging contract that's still pending. It's exclusively focused on their region, and it's in conjunction with the Mid-Atlantic purchasing team. Their most recent plan, according to our last conversation, was that they would finalize the contracts in late August or early September. So keep your eyes out for announcements from them. Next slide, please. So shifting to refer to the two sets of contracts that are currently available. These are the general types of entities that can use them. Meg talked about this a bit in the context of MAPC. The eligibility details are slightly different when you look at subtypes within different types of schools or whatnot between Sourcewell and MAPC/combis. So you should just check with them to figure out whether you're eligible. From the Sourcewell perspective, it basically is memberships open to all levels of government, elementary through 12th grade schools, higher education institutions, and nonprofit entities, and they cover both the US and Canada. And then I should mention that although these contracts were designed to meet typical requirements for public purchasing, purchasers themselves must determine whether these cooperative contracts meet their specific requirements in their local jurisdiction and in their own states. Next slide. So the scope of the contracts we developed together with Sourcewell covers hardware, installation, and network services. And in particular, there are options for both networked and non-networked equipment, and there's a focus on level 2 and DC fast charge. And then finally, these services also can include operational elements such as monitoring, billing, and smart charging. Next slide. The Sourcewell contracts that are available include AirVironment, ChargePoint, Greenlots, LilyPad, and Siemens. And the important thing to note is that these are full catalog awards. That means that if a vendor, anything within the catalog is available, and if a vendor adds a new product and it aligns with the category that Sourcewell made the vendor award on originally, that product can be made available, even if it wasn't available at the time the contract was awarded. Next slide. So I've included this table to give you a sense of the EV charging contracts available, and in particular, the value of cooperative procurement in generating significant discounts. The 5 awarded vendors have all identified discounts for level 2 stations, typically on the order of 15 to 30%, and DC fast charge discounts that are a bit less, typically on the order of 5 to 15%. As I mentioned before, this includes all their products, and there's typically no discount arranged for installation among these providers. Next slide. Since Meg already covered the MAPC and the VEH 102 contracts, I'm going to skip this over, but I wanted to make sure that the availability of Clipper Creek, Furdeck, EVSE, LLC, Graybar, Voltrek, and Watzilla is highlighted. Next slide. And then to reiterate, the important thing that Meg mentioned is that in order to obtain final pricing on these contracts, you have to create a statement of work to send out to any or all of the vendors, and in that way you'd be able to get bids that you could compare apples to apples, and the pricing may be even better than what's listed on this slide of indicative pricing. So with that, next slide, I'll leave you with the contact information both on the Sourcewell side and for Meg at MAPC, and I'll hand things over to Barry Carr to talk about the propane autogas and natural gas vehicles that are also on contract.
Thank you, Philip. There we go. I'm Barry Carr. I'm the coordinator of Clean Communities of Central New York, and it's been a pleasure working with all these other people on Fleets for the Future for the past 2 years. Next slide, please. So not to step too far back, because we have had a webinar on this already, but the benefits of gaseous fuel vehicles, especially when you get into the medium and heavy duty world, are certainly reduced emissions, lower fuel costs, reduced volatility, that's price volatility. So you can get a gaseous fuel, as in propane or natural gas, with anywhere from a 6-month to probably a 5-year fixed price, and as well as lower maintenance costs, because we're talking about vehicles that are do not have to have diesel particulate filters and diesel emission fluid on board, and eventually lower total cost of ownership. So while the vehicles do cost more upfront, because of the lower fuel costs and the lower maintenance costs, the total cost of ownership is lower. Next slide, please. Available partners through Sourcewell are many, particularly on the OEM side. You'll see a slide shortly that shows a variety of different automobile dealers and a variety of different truck dealers, as well as specialty equipment manufacturers. So we're covering light, medium, heavy-duty vehicles. We're covering EV charging. We're covering leasing services, in which case the leasing company typically would take part of the tax credit that is available on the private side and not available on the public side. And then finally, fleet management services. This is a relatively new category with Sourcewell. We also utilize regionally developed contracts, and you heard Megan talk about the contract in Massachusetts, as well as Mark in Kansas City has a contract in the Washington, D.C. region through the Metro Washington Council of Governments has a contract. Next slide, please. On Sourcewell and medium and heavy duty contracts, this is pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to read it, but on the left side are the names of the vendors. In the middle are the types of vehicles on the top going from left to right, and immediately below those categories are whether they are available in CNG, compressed natural gas, or propane. And then to the right is whether or not they are available as a cab chassis, so they can be customized, if they are available with additional components or added on, or they're available only as full complete vehicles. Next slide, please. This is actually the most important slide. It shows available vendors through the Sourcewell contracts. And you'll see at the top, there is a cooperative of automobile OEM dealers, including BMW, Chevrolet, Ford, Honda, Nissan, and Toyota, and then specialty vehicle companies such as Zenith Motors, and then companies that are particular to the refuse business, companies that are particular to the school bus business, and companies that are particular to the street sweeping business and Class 8 truck business. Next slide, please. The best applications and why. Next slide. What we're attempting to do in this contract and in reaching out to all of these vendors over the last 2 years, we quiz them on what types of vehicles could show the greatest amount of savings in an aggregated procurement. So those vehicles were sedans, SUVs, and crossovers built by OEMs, cargo and passenger vans, half-ton, three-quarter-ton, and one-ton, pickup trucks, again, half-ton, three-quarter-ton, and one-ton in various configurations, and then class 3 through 7, those are weight class vehicles. So typical box truck or a heavy-duty work truck or a school bus. Next slide, please. Specialty heavy-duty vehicles are available from directly through the OEM's dealership network. So you can order these vehicles in this picture, every single one of them with a dedicated natural gas engine, and some of them now with a dedicated propane engine. And again, this is just an option. It comes directly through the dealership. Next slide, please. We also have buses, school buses on the contract. We do not currently have transit buses on the contract because it's such a specialized service based on what state and what region you're in the world. But again, these vehicles are all available with a gaseous fuels option and the ability to run on either propane or natural gas. Next slide, please. We feel that these categories are very well suited for municipal applications. So again, sedans, pickup trucks, crossover vehicles, light duty vehicles, class 3 through 6 work trucks, class 4 through 6 shuttle buses, school buses, refuse trucks, transit buses, and street sweepers. This chart shows which ones are available with compressed natural gas and which ones are available with LPG propane. Typically, all of them outside of the refuse world are available in both. Next slide, please. Unlike most EVs through an auto dealership and a few of the propane vehicles, the aggregated procurement partners are third parties who work directly with the OEMs. So these are companies like Roush, like Westport, like Landy Renzo, that manufacture and assemble either natural gas and or propane operating systems. They have a relationship directly with the OEM. You go into the OEM dealership, you order your F-150 as an example. That vehicle gets built by Ford with a gaseous prep option. It gets shipped to a third party that installs the natural gas or the propane operating system on it, and then reinserted into the OEM delivery service. So it comes directly back to the dealership for prep and delivery to the end user. So in many cases, the end user might not be aware that it is a third party making the vehicle because that third party already has the relationship with the OEM. Next slide, please. I'm going to introduce Kelly Gilbert here from Kansas City Clean Cities to talk a little bit about alternative fuel vehicle readiness, and I will join her at the end to talk about the VW settlement. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thanks, Barry. Again, this is Kelly Gilbert with Kansas City Regional Clean Cities Coalition. We're managed by Metropolitan Energy Center in Kansas City, which is a nonprofit with a mission of energy conservation in general. Next slide. I'm going to spend a few minutes reminding you to make use of your Clean Cities Coordinator and for technical help and for funding purposes. So it was important for the National Association of Regional Councils to partner with a few Clean Cities coalitions to incorporate our long experience with alternative fuel deployments and create thoughtful tools and relationships towards regional council members under this project. 25 years ago, the Clean Cities program was created within the Vehicle Technologies Office at the U.S. Department of Energy. It's a community-based program that creates partnerships in the public and private sectors. Our mission is to advance the energy, economic, and environmental security of the United States by supporting local actions to cut petroleum use in transportation. Other benefits of our program include air quality improvements from reduced emissions, a reduced dependence on imported petroleum. And most alternative fuels are domestically produced, so they support the national economy, and some alternative fuels have a high impact on your local economy. In addition, Clean Cities prevented more than 5.6 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions in 2015 alone. We're a very effective program, and we know a good deal about alternative fuels, so give us a call if you reach these stumbling blocks. On that note, are you ready for Fleets for the Future in your community? Next slide, please. Clean Cities can help you determine if you're ready for alternative fuels. Fleets for the Future is focused on gaseous fuel vehicles and electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. In order to use this program in your area, you need a mature alternative fuel marketplace. This means having resources in the community for the types of alternative fuels being promoted and procured. And a mature marketplace begins with local dealerships that can provide not just sales, but especially ongoing service. And there is a lot more to readiness. It includes primary and backup fueling stations, support for alternative fuels by your utilities or propane fuel suppliers, alternative fuel conversion shop for vehicles that don't come factory direct, and preferably one or more champion fleets that's happy to take calls from other fleets doing research. Now, your local market may be ready for one or more alternative fuels, but not all of them. And if you want help making a determination about market readiness in your area, ask your coordinator. So now that you're ready for alternative fuels, how will you fund your project? Next slide, please. The Volkswagen Environmental Mitigation Trust is coming soon to a state near you, or it may already be playing at your local state agency. Including territories, tribal, and administrative allocations, there's just over $3 billion for clean diesel projects across the United States under the Volkswagen settlement. Fleets for the Future can help you acquire alternative fuel equipment faster under the settlement and to reduce overall costs helping to stretch the Volkswagen funds further in your state. The funding only applies to diesel engines, which includes vehicles classes 4 through 8. Fleets may repower or replace diesel vehicles with newer, cleaner equipment. Clean diesel or biodiesel, natural gas, propane, electric, hybrid, and hydrogen all qualify under the program. Scrapping rules apply, meaning that recipients must destroy and scrap engines and chassis being replaced. The federal settlement agreement sets maximum funding percentage limits for various technologies, but our states are designing and managing their own program guidelines, which will further limit the use of funds within each state. In most cases, natural gas and propane repower and replacement of older and larger diesels, including trucks, shuttles, and buses, the categories that Barry just emphasized a minute ago. These have significant NOx reduction per dollar spent. Electrification has more significant air pollution reduction, but it also has higher costs. Still, in many cases, these will also be sufficient and a good use of environmental mitigation funds. Next slide. To find information specific to your state, I advise you to look at the VW Clearinghouse. It is a collaborative effort of the National Association of State Energy Officials and the National Association of Clean Air Agencies. The information on that website is not infallible, but links from the dashboard will take you to live state implementation pages where the latest information is available. Many other agencies and organizations are keeping track of state progress, including NGV America, PERC at propane.com, and of course our Clean Cities Coordinator. Each state is taking a unique approach to applying the settlement funds within the bounds of the rules set by the settlement. Some states are already funding new projects, while other states are still undergoing mitigation plan approvals. Some states are going through a legislative appropriations process for the funding, which allows for public input on an annual basis, but means that their plans may change depending on legislative decisions. And other states are treating the funds similar to grant funds, which means that the agency will have more control over scheduling. Some states are allowing for deployment of electric charging stations, while others are leaving that solely up to Electrify America. So as there's basically too many details to keep track of on a national basis, I encourage you to join the email list for your state beneficiary agency if there's one available, so you have the best information as soon as possible, and to be in touch with your Clean Cities Coordinator for help interpreting your state's rules and for help planning for and applying for funds. As spending and reporting progresses, you can track use of funds at vwenvironmentalmitigationtrust.com, which is the public transparency site created by the trustee for the whole $3 billion program. Next slide. So many states, as I mentioned, have already opened funding opportunities. So contact your local Clean Cities Coalition for the latest information. Here's a update on Kansas and Missouri. Both of our states recently finalized their plans, and Missouri has an open solicitation currently for school buses. It closes this Friday, so there's a tiny window still open. It's using a simple application form, which is available on its Environmental Mitigation Trust website. We're expecting trucks in transit application to be available shortly. Kansas has not released any funding opportunities quite yet, but we expect to hear an announcement from them this fall in the near future. And Barry, what's happening in New York?
Thank you, Kelly. This is Barry Carr. In New York, our funding was just announced last week. It is a total of $127.8 million, and the actual organization as to how the funds will be given out is yet to be determined. Actually, it's been determined, but is yet to be announced. But our money is being handled through the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. They are working in conjunction with NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, and functions as our energy office. And they are also taking some of the funds and having them flow directly to one of our authorities, which is the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. So if any of you who are on this webinar are within New York State or New Jersey, please feel free to reach out to me. There are a number of public hearing sessions. Our Clean Cities has been hosting sessions in upstate New York, notably in Buffalo and in the Syracuse, Central New York area. And the Clean Cities in New York City has been hosting sessions out on Long Island and in New York City. So again, your Clean Cities Coalition, simply go to cleancities.energy.gov and put in your zip code or put in your area. It will route you directly to the closest Clean Cities Coalition, and they should have the most up-to-date information. And just like Kelly said, this is a tremendous program, and by working through Fleets for the Future and working through Sourcewell, you should be able to get more vehicles or more infrastructure for the same amount of money, and everyone will win. So thank you very much. And I believe the next slide is going to be turned over to Ryan Daly from the Electrification Coalition. Are you on mute, Ryan?
Great. No, I am here. Can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I think as we transition here, we are also going to swap away from the webinar to my screen, to the website that was just shown to everybody. So in a little bit of a departure from the slideshow, what we thought would be a little bit easier is to show you how on the electric vehicle side, the Fleets for the Future program is really kind of evolving and moving into the next phase of its existence. So some of you may have heard this, excuse me, yesterday, but out in Los Angeles, Mayor Eric Garcetti announced yesterday the launch of the Climate Mayor's Electric Vehicle Purchasing Collaborative, which is a program that will provide a turnkey one-stop online procurement portal, providing municipalities and counties and other public sector organizations easy access to competitively bid EVs. And what that means is really we've just kind of repurposed the work that we have done with Sourcewell over the course of the last year into a standalone online presence where it brings all of those opportunities that were just discussed right into one specific location where you all are able to access not only the vehicles, but also the charging infrastructure that was mentioned by Philip, and as well as the forthcoming fleet leasing / fleet management services that will be available once the contracts are finalized and prices are posted online. So just going to the main landing page for this, you can see the URL up here is driveevfleets.org. This is part of the overall Climate Mayors Initiative, which is being focused on today as part of the Global Climate Action Summit in Los Angeles. And this website was unveiled yesterday. So in addition to some of the basic information about available electric vehicles, the procurement process, you can see what the collaborative is about. And then within this, you can go directly to, the vehicles and pricing that is available through existing Sourcewell contracts. So here we have the 2019 offerings for the Chevy Volt, the Pacifica Hybrid, Ford Focus, etc. And what you see here is really a wide swath of different vehicles that are available right now through National Auto Fleet Group. But as I mentioned, as the initiative takes hold, there will be additional offerings available both through a traditional, not traditional, but through financing. So what looks like a more traditional financing where the vehicle is leased, but it does not come with additional fleet management services. And then later on this year, the more full service fleet management leasing options that will be available. Through this, you are also able to access the charging station solutions and partners that were mentioned earlier. And then this content also includes all of the contracts that were competitively solicited through Sourcewell. And so this platform is live and available now. A large part of yesterday's announcement were the 19 cities and 2 counties that made formal commitments in advance of yesterday's announcement to use this platform to procure electric vehicles and to do so over the course of the next 12 months. I will add that in addition to those folks that made the formal commitment as part of yesterday's announcement, there are about another 400 cities that have committed to the Climate Mayors program in general, and with whom we will be working to ensure that they can take advantage of this contract or otherwise make sure that they get electric vehicles through state bids or other opportunities if that is what they ultimately end up doing. So with that, we just wanted to show the evolution of the program and what is available now. I guess I can stop there and leave a little bit of time for questions.
Thank you so much, Ryan and everybody. So now we are happy to open it up for questions. So as a reminder, if you have anything, please type them into the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen.
So we do have a couple questions right now. This one is for Megan. If you are located in a state other than Massachusetts and are in a town that would like to participate in a program like this, how do you go about doing so if your state doesn't have a contract in place similar to the one that Massachusetts has?
So the contract itself, the communities across the nation can participate in. If you're interested in facilitating a similar big buy group purchase program off of the VEH 102 contract for out-of-state purchases, I recommend just reaching out to me. We can talk through that a little bit more. I think that would definitely be a possibility to facilitate a similar structure in other regions using the VEH 102 contract as a mechanism. But currently there aren't any open group purchasing opportunities that we're facilitating.
Thanks, Meg. We have another question. What about purchasing electric vehicles for residents, not public entities? Are there arrangements to help set up programs for residents? I know Mass Energy has done something like this in Massachusetts, but any support you know of for any other nonprofits?
Well, this is Barry Carr. I'll take a stab at that. If you are a nonprofit, you can purchase vehicles through Sourcewell off of this contract. It's not just for municipalities, nonprofits count as well. On the public side, on the private side, there is not an agreement in place, but what you have seen on the EV side is employers are sometimes offering separate incentives for EVs, particularly the electric utilities. So in New York State, we have National Grid, and National Grid offers its employees up to, I believe, a $4,000 subsidy, depending on the all-electric range of the vehicle they purchase. It's very similar to the New York State program for private individuals for EVs that pays up to $2,000, depending on the all-electric range of the vehicle.
I'd also recommend that if Kelly's still on, she could talk about a couple of the EV group buys that happened in the Kansas City region that worked in collaboration with Fleets for the Future. I think that would be instructive.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. I was wondering if that was appropriate here. We in Kansas City, between our organization and Kansas City Power and Light, we have basically had deep discounts on the Nissan Leaf for literally months on end. It's probably been almost a year. We started out with a $10,000 discount, and now we're at a $3,000 discount for the new Nissan Leaf. And that was essentially a partnership between an organization and the Nissan North America. So they basically extended a manufacturer's discount to customers of the utility. In some respects, we have worked with them to extend discounts to the University of Missouri Kansas City staff and students and alumni. We also worked with them to extend those discounts to employees and citizens of the Kansas City, Missouri. So, we haven't been able to work a program similar to that with any other manufacturer. Nissan has been the most open to do that. I do think that BMW may be doing something similar in other areas. So those are some opportunities. If you happen to be an employer or and you have a relationship with an electric vehicle OEM, you might be able to work with them to extend discounts to your constituents.
Thank you all. Another question, are any electric school buses included in any of the current contracts or programs? If not, when will they be?
This is Barry Carr. I can tell you that there probably will be, because both IC and Bluebird have announced electric school buses, but the pricing and the availability has not been determined as of yet. We do have Zenith electric vehicles on. It's not a school bus, but it's an all-electric shuttle bus that is on the Sourcewell contract. But it is to be determined based on the availability and when the vehicles are actually going to go on sale.
And Bluebird is on contract with Sourcewell, so their products should be available. And then IC, as their new models are developed, should also be available in the future.
Thank you both. Any other questions? I'll give everyone another minute.
This is Sarah, and I'd just like to add too that even though Fleets for the Future as a grant is ending, all of these opportunities will continue to be available through Sourcewell. So keep that in mind when you are ready to purchase alternative fuel vehicles, that those options will be available. You will also be receiving an email within the next day with a link to the video recording of this webinar, in addition to the slides. And don't forget that the slides are also available in your control panel under handouts. And you can visit our website, fleetsforthefuture.org. Our resources will stay up there. Cameron, do we have any other questions?
Nope.
All righty. Well, thank you all so much for joining, and feel free to reach out to any of these people we have listed up right now. And thank you to our excellent team, and have a good rest of your day.